Hi, in today's story I'm going to be reading a chapter from this book, Jeremy Clarkson's Diddly Squat, Pigs Might Fly. Now that we know it's going to cost £11 million to heat our houses this winter, and that we won't be able to afford to pay because our monthly mortgage payments will be bigger than the gross domestic product of Switzerland, many commentators are offering handy tips on how to save money. You should put on an extra jumper, they say, and burn litter if you want to stay warm. You should glue your teeth together so you don't waste money on food. And if you do, by some miracle, need the lavatory, you should wipe your bottom with a smooth stone to save on bog roll. It all sounds very uncomfortable and horrid. But happily, I have an easy and actually quite pleasant way of saving yourself an absolute fortune. Simply remove from your life every single luxury brand name. 3 or 4 years ago, when the world was joined up by ships and planes and everything worked, I had an hour to kill in London before lunch. So Lisa suggested we go to a shop called Chanel to buy a frock. Like all frocks, it was made from a bit of cotton thread and the shavings from a sheep, which will have cost the manufacturing at most 15p. But because the label said Chanel, it cost 2,000 times more than a frock, made from exactly the same materials that you could buy in a market stall in Bradford. And what about pens? You could have something made by Mont Blanc, which would cost around £2,400. But will it be any better at jotting stuff down than a big biro, which will cost you about 10p? It's the same story with watches, suitcases, shoes, cars, jewellery, or indeed anything you can buy in those awful brand shops that litter airport departure lounges and high-end holiday resorts. And then there's furniture. I recently built a house and needed a sort of sideboard thing for the hall. So I went to all the trendy places in Chelsea and Notting Hill, and everything cost more than tropical islands. And nothing could be delivered until the third quarter of 2028. I therefore decided an antique alternative would be better and started trawling various shops in the Cotswolds. God, there are some bargains to be had, and antiques, because they were made in the 18th century, are available now. However, it's tricky to find exactly what you want. We spend weeks wandering around Stow-on-the-Wold and Chipping Norton and the giant bric-a-brac hangars outside Malmesbury, and everything was either the right size and a bit ugly, or beautiful but the wrong shape. Then we heard about a little man in a nearby village, an old-school craftsman, a chap who wears dungarees and gets away with it. He operates out of what's nothing more than a hut, which is rammed full of tables he's restoring and chairs he's reupholstering, and yes, he could make us a sideboard that would fill exactly the 12-foot gap between the loo door and the door to the kitchen. And now he has, and it's one of the most exquisite and beautifully crafted things I've ever seen. It's made from Brazilian rosewood, has a splash of marquetry, legs more captivating than Elle Macpherson's, and lovely lion head handles. And the cost? It would be rude to say, but what's to shy of anything modern that you could find in London? Buoyed by this, we found another little man in Cirencester, who, for a fraction of what we'd pay if we went to a designer brand, could make us a sofa to fit, precisely, in our new TV room. And he'd upholster it in any material that took our fancy, and stuff it with phyllo plume feathers from a red-tailed hawk, if that's what we wanted. I was so pleased with the result, and I've now asked him to make another sofa for the sitting room. This brings me on to wallpaper. The choice you have from existing brands is bewildering. So bewildering that it will be impossible for the average couple to agree on anything. Amazingly, Lisa and I agreed that the downstairs loo should be lined with black flock wallpaper, but having decided this, we were presented with several million alternatives, which caused massive rows. Many slammed doors, separate beds for about a month, and a much blocking on Instagram. So we decided to abandon the established brands and chose instead to have our wallpaper hand-painted by a little man from the Middle Ages. I can't remember where he lives. Some place where they believe in ley lines. Somerset? Wiltshire? Whatever, he's not being particularly speedy, and nor will he show us what he's actually doing. This is the way with little men in the village. They're craftsmen, not businessmen, and in their mind, the customer isn't just wrong, he's a damn nuisance. But after a 6-month wait, he finally produced some panels for the wardrobe in our bedroom, and every morning we are compelled to spend about an hour just staring at them. There are flowers and songbirds, and it's all just too wonderful for words. And the work, which is unique, remember, costs less than buying off the peg wallpaper from Osborne and Little. There's another advantage to the little man in the village, thinking as well, because if you have any money in a savings account, all you'll be able to watch in the coming months is the value of those savings go down and down and down as inflation bites. Eventually, you won't have enough to buy a pack of Lurpak. Whereas if you buy something beautiful now, you'll be able to look at that instead. Sure, you'll be hungry and cold, but you'll be surrounded by stuff that gives you pleasure, which is better than being hungry and cold and surrounded by nothing at all, except a Dolce & Gabbana watch. Autumn. 3 from the sun. The water companies are having a spot of bother at the moment. It seems they are allowing all our drinking water to escape into the earth because they're too busy filling every picturesque trout stream, while coating every south coast surfer with a thick veneer of human effluent. Needless to say, the nation's beach dudes, world swimmers and fishermen are not terribly happy about this state of affairs, and consequently rushing about saying that water company bosses should hand back their £1 billion salaries and then walk naked through the town centre while people throw vegetables at them and chant shame. I'm not sure, however, that we should be so quick to judge. As a kid, I would spend most of my holidays in Swaledale trying to dam Thwaite back. And what I learned is you can't. Water is as unruly as a railman's trade union. If you plug one gap, it will simply find another. And then, if it thinks you are getting somewhere, there will be deluge in the hills, and the back will be instantly transformed into a rampaging brown torrent, full of tree trunks and boulders. And soon every scrap of evidence that they were there will be gone. Water is a terminator. It absolutely will not stop. So the idea that it can be controlled and steered and cajoled by a bunch of businessmen with a PowerPoint presentation and some meeting biscuits is laughable. They may do a pretty good job most of the time, but occasionally the aquatic Arnie will throw them a curveball. I have absolutely no idea how the water companies control sewage, or how they find any employees, because I would rather do anything, even that, than work in a sewer, chiselling fatbergs from Basil Get's stonework. I also have no idea why the system breaks down from time to time. There could be no doubt that the fundamental cause is not Boris Johnson, or climate change, or Brexit, or any other fashionable left-wing excuse. It's that this country produces approximately 70 million poos a day, which is too many. That's probably why, this morning, Caleb came bouncing into the farm office to announce that he's just done a deal with Severn Trent to buy some of those poos, which he's going to use as fertiliser. He was very excited, saying it costs 10 times less than animal muck, and about 1,000th of what I pay for chemicals I use at Dildy Squat. Some quick research revealed that according to the United Nations, 80% of the world's wastewater is pumped into the oceans, which does raise a question. Instead of polluting the sea and the baby turtles that live in it, why not use our waste as fertiliser? This is then used to fertilise the fields, and that's fine, except a soldier who defected recently was found to be full of parasitic worms, several of which were more than 10 inches long. I have other issues too. Humans tend to eat plants, which are fed by sunlight, which means they are once removed from the sun. We also eat animals that eat plants, because they are too from the sun. We do not, however, eat animals that eat other animals, because that means eating 3 from the sun, which in general is a healthy no-no. So how do I feel about eating plants that have been fertilised? Same as I would about eating food fertilised with dog muck. Nervous. In the UK, we do not use the term night soil. It has a less sinister name, cake, and that's not raw sewage. It's treated and blended and pasteurised and possibly sold with added lavender to make it smell so lovely you won't know whether to put it in your window box or your knicker drawer. Naturally, the manufacturers are keen to talk about the benefits. Human waste is rich in potassium and nitrogen, and it's said so much phosphorus that if it were properly collected, it could account for 22% of the total global demand. I see the appeal too, because without any mining and without any need for giant chemical plants in Russia and China, we are using an unending waste product to make more waste product. Now, I know that last one was a little bit different. It's not quite a poem or something like I've read before recently on my YouTube channel, but I must say I've partway through this book and I must say I'm really enjoying it. It's quite a new one, and even my kids are going through and reading this as well. But I hope you enjoy this story. I would appreciate it if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, and if you've got any other comments or if you've got any other suggestions for books or stories or poems that you'd like me to read, then leave it in comments below. Thanks for joining me today.